Hello and welcome. If my audio is working, I got a connection is unstable warning as we were going live. Great timing. But welcome to episode 60 of the CIS and Senteon webinar series. The CIS half of this is unfortunately not available today. They have a personal matter they needed to jump over to. But we are very excited to welcome Brad Powell from Threat Captain, fellow Pitch It company, which we will be diving into here in a moment. But thanks for joining us, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate you asking me to come hang out.
Dude, I mean, from the crow's nest, which we'll have to dive into a little bit. I mean, there was no better guest. I wanted to make sure we had our webinar series, and I do want to do a whole nother episode with you more about the entrepreneurship side and our learnings, right? Because being both entrepreneurs in early stage companies, both part of Pitch It, like it's a pretty unique experience that both of us share.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's always fun to share those stories, right? And you're like, oh, I understand where you are, or gosh, I feel the same way, right?
That,
It's always nice to have that type of banter as well with
It
you.
really is. I mean, entrepreneurship for any other entrepreneurs listening, very much an isolating field, but with friends, it gets a little bit better. But per the usual format, let's jump in really quick if we can pop my screen up. So as a reminder, if you're a first-time listener, Senteon is a automation platform to remediate the CIS benchmarks or security configurations to best practice standards on workstations, servers, and browsers. So we were part of Pitch It along with Threat Captain, and we were fortunate enough to be selected as a finalist to head over to IT Nation this year, and we will be presenting on stage in a effort to win the $100,000 prize. So very much would love it if you guys came out and supported us out at the event. So that'll be going on November 6th at IT Nation in Orlando. Outside of that, these webinars that we do every single week, you can find them on our website. We do upload them after each set, and you can watch them here. You can read about it in our blogs. And as a listener, you are invited to click this login button, and you can sign in with a free platform that you can do free risk assessments and free learning mode as a perk of joining our webinars. To kind of show what that is, you will get access to freemium forever. This is a database of all of the settings, the CIS benchmarks with their policy number, the safeguard. And the cool thing here is you can add regulatory standards so that you can see the crosswalks here in real time. So you can check mark whatever you want, and you can see it right here. The best part is, for being a viewer of the webinar, you can also head over to report generation, and you can see your existing configuration status against the same type of frameworks I just showed you. So now you can generate a testable reports and just gain more awareness for where your settings live against other frameworks. The other piece, if you do check out the full version of Senteon, again, the big thing we do is remediation. So any of those configuration scanning reports that you use today, that if they look like this, which most of them do because by default, only about 17% of it is correct, you can actually perform remediation with Senteon. So now you can have a very compliant report. But that is the catch up for today. And with that, let's dive into the more exciting things and welcome Brad once more. So Threat Captain co-founder, previously, I think, co-founder of Hook Security, if I remember correctly. Give
That's
us a little
correct.
background on yourself and what led you to Threat Captain.
Yeah, well, initially got my start in real estate. Honestly,
Real
when I first
estate.
for the first 5 years of my career was really around real estate, and that led me into getting my MBA, where I ended up meeting my co-founder Adam Anderson, who was the entrepreneur in residence, and together we built Hook Security, which is a cybersecurity awareness training company. Really focused around extremely good content and really making cybersecurity not so boring for the everyday employee that drives into work every day.
Yeah, I don't know if that's completely possible. That's a heck of a goal you guys had.
It is a huge mountain to climb, but ultimately we're still at it today. But yeah, Adam and I started Threat Captain almost a year ago. We started on Halloween of last year. And we've really gotten obsessed with the financial
About to have the
impact and cost
anniversary.
analysis. Yeah, thanks, man. We've really gotten obsessed about about the financial impact and likelihood, and really explaining that not only from the security admin side, but also the C-suite, and the really thinking about this as a business risk associated when it comes to cybersecurity. So yeah, we've been having a lot of fun doing it, and really helping MSPs level up their practice and how they talk, prospect, think through the financial side of these cybersecurity incidents.
So Threat
It's been
Captain
fun,
is
man.
providing, I was going to say, providing the ship, just lean into the nautical theme, but providing kind of the medium to better communicate the financial risk of not having security pieces in place. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah. And then even going deeper and showing, hey, if we do deploy and infuse configuration management into our
Sure.
practice, this is how it's actually going to drive down the risk, right? And we can actually put financial dollars to that to help show the MSP's clients what's your best bang for your buck. If I have to spend money this quarter on security and cyber, what are some areas that I should look at that are actually going to drive risk down and the likelihood down?
So from Senteon's perspective, as a security vendor, one of the questions I get all the time is, how do I price this to my clients, or how do I get my clients to accept yet another security tool, even if it's a different layer doing something completely different? It's a question that I get. So is part of your goal, or is the main goal, to help MSPs sell more security platforms to their end clients? Is that part of the goal, the main goal? Where does that sit?
That's absolutely part of the goal, is to enable them to not only show security control road mapping, but also to have those initial conversations to set themselves apart as well. So for the net new prospecting side as well,
Mm-hmm.
as well as deepen those relationships and deepen the conversation with current clients. So it's kind of hitting full spectrum, cradle to grave. Those clients that you're trying to get all the way into your current clients. So it's a mix of what our
Mm-hmm.
platform can do.
So this is also something used as prospecting to help gain new business.
Absolutely. Oh yeah. Yes.
That's awesome.
Oh
Well,
yeah.
that is a very cool initiative you guys took, and it sounds like it came from real learnings that you had at your previous ventures. So tell us a little bit again about the entrepreneurship side. You built Hook Security from scratch, very successful. Obviously, you're semi-involved at this point, more into Threat Captain. But any takeaways, or I guess differences you experienced from day one entrepreneur one versus company two day one?
I think, for me, it's just kind of understanding where your skill sets are best, right? Especially as
Mm-hmm.
a founder. Because as a founder, when you're a founder, you have to kind of be dangerous at a little bit of everything, right? Or be able to scratch the
Got to wear a
surface.
lot of hats.
You got to wear a lot of different hats in the role. But there's always those certain skill sets that you have that are better than others, right? And that's where I think you, as a founder, need to double down and understand where you best fit. And because this is my, I have a couple of these starting businesses under my belt, I do understand where I fit best. And so I think that self awareness has allowed me to really understand when I'm starting to get in the way, when I need to push harder. But I found that when you're looking at that hockey stick of growth as an entrepreneur, because you all want to look at that, right? We
Yep.
all want to say, how do
Everyone
we
wants to talk
scale?
about it.
Yeah, but it's we all want to talk about what it looks like when we get there. But what I have realized, Zach, is that I really enjoy and am obsessed with the bottom of that arrow where you're starting from
Wow.
scratch. And so really trying to drive an organization, a company to, those first small wins, big wins as a startup. And so I've realized that that's really where I like to live. So that's why I'm back here at square one with Threat Captain.
That's awesome. Getting to start from scratch again. I know, looking back on my own path, there are a lot of things we'd probably do a little bit different personally, but at the end of the day, it is exciting times to be pre hockey stick.
Mhm.
It seems mythical, but allegedly it comes to any startup who works hard enough.
That's right.
No,
That's what it takes,
nope.
consistent hard work. a lot of like what the CIS benchmarks and some of these things that we're going to talk about today, they're not necessarily fun to do. But
Yep.
you need to be disciplined and you need to look at these benchmarks and move yourself forward similar to a
They
business.
create a hockey stick in your security posture.
There
Right?
you
That was a
go.
good
That's
one.
where, that's right. Yeah, exactly.
No, I love it. And that is a perfect segue. I am not going to jump on it because I do want to give credit to Pitch It before we jump into CIS. So second time, or rather, you do have multiple companies under your belt, but really second security focused company, if I know correctly. But you guys still joined Pitch It, still went through the program that IT Nation puts on to gain additional new learnings. Anything you can share, I guess, why you guys wanted to be a part of it and any takeaways from it, just to give credit to how me and you actually met each other.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things, meeting all the other great founders and companies that are focused on the MSPs, focused on solutions and security or other, industries or other, benefits, and that in itself has been great, right? Because we get to know a lot of other vendors. There's a lot of commonalities. There's a lot of integration opportunities that
Yep.
that are conversations that are having because of that. But then also the education. The education was great. The people that were selected to come speak to us uh, couldn't talk highly enough about it. Adam and I would come away with 1, 2, 3 key hot takes, from each session.
I think you do
Um,
meetings after the session with your co-founder, right? You guys had follow-up discussions to debrief on the takeaways.
yes, absolutely. And it's just a great opportunity to get around like-minded founders in similar situations as well, and kind of seeing each other grinding it out. Um, And then the pitch it experience, I think alone, just going through that was very beneficial for our business to kind of think through some of the details of our messaging, our go to
Yep.
market. But ultimately, it was a great experience. I'm really excited for you and that you get an opportunity to go for it all. I'll be there rooting you on, dude.
Appreciate it, man. I know you've been a big help just to kind of in the networking I did before. Like we talked both before we did our presentations and hyped each other up before and after. So no, I mean, it's been a great program for both of us. So very much, if you are an entrepreneur listening, apply. It's very, very engaging, very helpful. So with that, let's actually do turn the page. You did talk about creating that risk score. I know a little bit about your platform. To tout it up a little bit, right? They have different categories, and all of the different categories, depending on how much you do, determines that cost impact factor at the highest level, from what I know. Right? One of those categories is configuration management. So, Brad, kind of diving into the CIS benchmarks, those are literally all configurations. Could you, one, talk towards how CIS maybe does or does not play a role with Threat Captain? And then two, why you felt configuration management deserved its own category?
Yeah. So for us, configuration management is one of the biggest bangs for your buck whenever we do these likelihood simulations, quite honestly. So it's definitely something that we're seeing more and more prevalent. And I would just say, the fact that CIS has everything in place to move forward is one of the reasons that we've set it to the way that we're building out Threat Captain's platform. Now, I will say our algorithm currently today maps to the MITRE attack framework. So organically, we're just our lead product, Adam and his team
Yep.
are really looking to do more with you guys, Zach, at Senteon, honestly, so that
And
we
we
can
will be.
so that we can build in some more of the CIS benchmarks into how we're doing some of these financial reports and how we're actually looking at some of these risks. If you've implemented the certain things, how it can change different parameters. So that's one thing, man.
It's cool. I want to dive into that a little bit more because you guys took almost in a way took the opposite approach of Senteon, which is perfectly fine. So Senteon, we took CIS as our North Star because it's all preventative, very one-to-one recommendations. Do this to that, right? That's CIS.
Yep.
When talking, and CIS will also map to the MITRE attack technique. So by doing CIS, we're also doing those same MITRE type of mappings and those MITRE mitigation techniques.
Mitigations, yeah.
But the inverse of that is, or the opposite of that, with you guys, you're very much solely focused on where's the biggest risk, where's the biggest bang, and how does that technique, what mitigates the risk of that technique being successful. So it makes more sense for you guys to start with MITRE. And now what you can do if you choose to, right? I'm not your roadmap guy, I'm not your product guy, but what Senteon did was we took CIS, mapped it to MITRE, and Brad kind of has the opportunity to do the similar thing, just opposite, to take MITRE and map it back to CIS and maybe
Yeah.
fill some additional gaps.
Yeah.
I'm
No,
so sorry about my throat.
that makes complete sense. And yeah, it sounds like we have a whole nother conversation on the side of that. And the reason that we use MITRE in ours is because we're looking at that kill chain. We want to show
Yep.
where the bad guys got in, how they got in, and then map that to what controls do you have in place so that we can get that financial cost through that algorithm.
Yep.
But yeah, that's going to
Absolutely.
be
So,
fun when we get that going,
dude, the reports are gonna be. I mean, that's one of the biggest challenges I have, and I hinted at this before. You know, MSPs will ask me, how do I sell this into my client? Like, how do I prove to them that having standardized and configured assets matter? Right? I'm like, well, for one, the top two, I think number two priority from Verizon report is literally default settings. That's the number two risk. The second point is the number four priority in the CIS controls. But anyway, it all wants to be related back to monetary. And the partnership between Senteon and Threat Captain and the integration that's coming will allow us to better create more tailored reports towards that financial side of the business to not only help your clients better understand the risk that's being mitigated, but rather the financial impact that's being mitigated as well. So I'm really excited for where that goes with us as well.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's gonna be great.
Yep. All right. Well, this episode is going to be all about Edge browser security. So we are going to be talking about I think 13 different settings today, and we will be giving a explanation of what the setting is and maybe why it's important. And if we're lucky, some additional stories from Brad about his experience looking into these settings and using them. So let's kick into this first setting here. Enable follow service in Microsoft Edge is set to disabled. So again, anything where I read like, you know, follow service, like something that doesn't really scream to me it's performing an action, always insinuates to me it's probably Microsoft just taking data that they probably don't need to perform what they want to do, or rather taking data that does not impact my user experience. So Brad, is that what this is saying? Is this just Microsoft collecting more data they might not need, or is this doing something else?
Yeah, so this is really showing. I mean, what we don't want is for these browser patterns to be analyzed anymore. Correct? I mean, and so we don't want to know what these sites you visited, recommended articles, news, type of content that you're looking at. So, I mean, by not having this feature and having it set to disable, you're helping prevent behavioral tracking, right?
Yep.
You're reducing personalized suggestions as
Yep.
well. You're as far as sensitive data and private browsing, you know, these are untracked, and then just minimizing data collection, because that's a lot of what
That's the key
happens
word
when
right
these,
there. The data
right.
collection, right? That's gold in the software world. You know,
Mhm.
Microsoft is, you know, for all intents and purposes, they're a data company, right? And
Yep.
CrowdStrike, they do what they do because they're a data company, right? They take all of these data points and they create products and better experiences from it, which is all great and good. But
Mhm.
what happens, or where does that data go? Should our data actually be trained on? Is that okay? You know, there's a whole AI conversation today. How much is where is it going? What's, you know, so that's the cool thing with these settings as well. We talk about the security point of view and how a bad actor can take advantage of these settings, but they're also privacy settings. It's
That's
about
right.
retaining the information that is yours and shouldn't go anywhere else. So maybe less of a security benefit, but extreme privacy benefit with some of these settings.
Oh yeah, especially, you know, these financial institutions,
Yeah.
healthcare organizations, those that are really having to follow the GDPR guidelines. I mean, this is particularly useful for those types of environments.
Yep. All right, let's go to this next setting here. So this one is enable globally scoped HTTP auth cache is set to disabled. So again, this is allowing HTTP auth cache out of the gate unless you change this setting. And I always think of this, you know, that's like what is it, a deprecated like authentication type of process, right? So this is, I mean, think of like a hotel, right? When I see this is like saying, hey, that one hotel key I used, instead of creating a new key when the next guest comes, it's still the same key. They just give my key to the next person, and it's the same key over and over, and there's no difference. It just continuously is cached over and over and reused every
Reused,
time.
yeah.
Yep. So why is it bad to, allow this type of cache? Obviously I gave my real world metaphor, but from the cyber world and the internet space, why is this cache so important to use more in a secure fashion and eliminate it when we can?
Yeah, I think it helps. Well, it helps prevent cross-site reuse,
Mm-hmm.
like you were saying,
Yep.
right? And the credentials there.
That's the biggest thing too. And you're calling out a MITRE attack technique right there, right? That's your
Yep,
background, is really this
yep.
risk side, and that's exactly right.
It. But it's important in environments that you need to be strictly controlled in. So, I mean, I'm kind of repeating what you just said with the hotels.
You're good.
But then also user control over authentication, right? Especially in like high security environments,
Yep.
government agencies you're seeing, again, financial institutions, which are huge, where you just don't need these login credentials exposed, less
Yep.
ways that you're going to get breached. So, um,
That right there too. The less ways you're going to get breached. So, Brad, talk to us a little bit. Obviously, you have your security background. You're a serial entrepreneur at this point. I think you meet that qualification, and you I mean, serial entrepreneur across a variety of industries. Plug in Braddies right there. Some good stuff.
okay. I hear you. Yep.
Yeah. So, um, when this talks about like, authentication cache, and I know compliance maybe isn't your strongest background or something you're overly familiar with, but do you believe like some of these settings, mitigate risk, of course, mitigate the attack techniques you're talking about, but are there compliance value to these settings as well?
Yes, for sure. I mean, you got
Mm-hmm.
HIPAA, you got
Yep.
PCI, you have a lot of these, again, the regulated industries that we keep talking on.
Yep.
This can be huge to put these in place, right? Because
Yep.
it really, it's like double dipping. All right, I'm
Yep.
doing this, I'm securing myself, but I'm also adhering to um, compliance checks.
Yep, absolutely. And you had mentioned a little bit ago as well, reducing I think you said reducing the surface or reducing the attack surface or something. So, I mean,
Yep.
that's another really good point that you bring up. Like, if you don't use something, why have it available, right? I know a contradictory or a conflicting setting. So part of the CIS benchmarks, if you watch the Windows OS hardening series we did, one of the recommendations from them is actually to disable OneDrive, right? I'm not saying OneDrive is bad. CIS isn't saying OneDrive is bad. But if OneDrive is not used, why do you need it enabled, right?
Mm.
So all of these settings that we're talking about here, as Brad said, it's about reducing that attack surface to just what you need. So that was a great explanation that you were leaning into there. All right, let's go to this next one here. Ensure enable guest mode is set to disabled. Do we not want anyone hopping on our browser, Brad? Why is that an issue?
Well, I think that's also, compliance is not my strong suit, but that definitely has some compliance,
Yeah.
written on it. Well, I mean, what was the question here?
So, why would we not want, Joe from the street to hop onto my browser, and sign in as a guest, right? Why is making sure guests can't use our browser a big deal?
Yeah, well, without signing into a profile, right? We have no trace of what
Yep,
happened, right?
exactly.
And um, this can really it bypasses all the logging and
Yep,
and your monitoring tools. So it's just you need to disable guest mode to ensure that all these browsing activities are logged, they're monitored. You can go back in an audit. I think it's important to be thinking through these things, especially like as a business owner that has a security mindset. Is like, goodness gracious, if we were breached and we had to go stand in front of a judge,
yep,
how can we show everything we tried to do. And if a guest came in and this was not that could have, there's just a lot of bad things that can happen. So this is a great thing to button up.
I love that you bring up the court too, because something that we've seen in the market, and maybe you've seen this as well, you can talk towards it, but configuration scanning, right? There's quite a handful of tools out there, whether it's a Nessus scanner, Cyrisma, like any of these scanning tools to let you know of all the things that are misconfigured or set to their default non-compliant state. You are now consciously aware of the risk. You know it's there. I know from experience doing this manually, it's a ton of work. But now, if an incident does happen and you need to go to court and you have to present to them what you're doing, and you show them a scan that lists out all the things you're supposed to be doing and know about, and that incident was potentially linked to that setting being not managed, how do you justify that?
You're sweating. Right?
You're sweating.
Right. Also, another thing I can make a point on guest mode is just maintaining that control over the web access.
Yes.
Right. That can be bad. So you have to enforce those. Ensure that users are always operating within the controlled environments, et cetera. Right. So
yep. You don't want anything anonymous in the environment, right? If you can't hold someone accountable, then what's the point of having it, right? It bypasses all the other security layers that you want to be enforced.
Yep, that's right. And then, compliance is huge on this too, because, I think most of these compliance standards are ensuring that these sessions are going to be logged. They're going to be monitored. Yep. So you have to kind of make sure. I know HIPAA, GDPR, and PCI. You have to log all this stuff. So
you got to retain them for X amount of time too. So very much spot on.
That's right. So those are some of the things that you can see as far as the benefits to ensuring that about that guest mode enabled. Yep.
One thing I'll also note about the slide format, you will see in the bottom left when this is linked back to a CIS control. Again, these are CIS benchmarks that then feed into controls to increase your compliance with that control or increase your attestation package to that control. And in the bottom right is a level. To be fair, on this one, I don't know of a reason you shouldn't be doing this because it is a level 2, which means CIS thinks this can be pretty disruptive. I would probably disagree and say this is something you should absolutely be doing. But yes, so level 2 means that this might cause a little bit of disruption. It might cause some end client pain. But again, read through these settings, understand these settings, and then make the decision that's best for your business. All right, let's hop over to the next one. So ensure enable network prediction is set to enabled. Don't predict network actions on any network connection. Man, this sounds like Microsoft performing telemetry where it's probably not needed. Tell us about why. I mean, anything with prediction just scares me in the security world, right? I don't want things learning my behavior and then predicting what's going to happen. But tell us why this is a little dangerous from the attacker point of view, or however you see this.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it can contribute to protecting the user privacy, right? When you can disable this, you're not preloading content from these sites that they may visit. So ultimately, again, it kind of comes down to that lowering the exposure or unintended exposure, right?
Yep. I mean, I could relate this to like physical security too. So fortunately, fortunately, it depends on your point of view. I don't drive to an office every day. But if I, had a very standardized routine and every day I open up my browser to type in the address of where I'm going, or I do whatever action over and over, if that data is saying, okay, at this time, he's always going to work, he's always on this road at this time, right? Mm-hmm. If a bad actor gets a hold of that data, they now know where I am, right? Because the computer was predicting where I was going to make my experience better. So maybe I have to click less buttons because it knows what I'm going to click. But now if a bad actor gets that data, they too know where I'm going.
Yeah. I mean, it comes back to that data. So improving that network security is huge for this too, right? It helps reduce that footprint and just the amount that's exposed to the network. So those are some things that immediately come to my mind.
Yep, I think those are good ones. All right, this next one here is enable profile creation from the identity flyout menu or the settings page is set to disabled. So this sounds like to me, and you can share your experience, but this sounds like, it's the best practice of creating a profile probably isn't from the flyout menu or settings page. There's probably a more secure place to create the profile from as opposed to this flyout. But please share what you know about this setting as well.
Yeah, I'd say to enhance the security, really being able to disable these profiles is going to help these administrators
Yep.
um, prevent just unmonitored or unrestricted browsing sessions. And I think
That's a hundred
that,
percent. Because
and then
right
also
now,
increase. Go ahead. Go ahead. Are
I
you
mean,
going to
right
say?
now, and you hinted at this, and I want to make sure it was clear to the audience, right? This is saying restricting the user privileges, giving the administrators more control is where I wanted to make sure it was emphasized in your response.
That's exactly what I was trying to say. Yep. And then really just enhancing the identity management, right? By disabling the abilities to create these profiles, we're really helping these users tie everything back to policies, procedures, etc.
Yeah.
Um,
And I
and
mean,
that's
you're a
that's when
serial
we're talking
entrepreneur.
MFA, right? SSO, activity logging, that sort of thing.
Yep. And I mean, you're an entrepreneur. You've built companies before. I mean, and maybe you'll disagree with me, but I imagine one of your most difficult challenges it is for most people, especially MSPs, is asset inventory. Hardware inventory or software inventory. If we're
Mhm.
allowing users to just create profiles on a whim without any restrictions or control, it makes that asset management process that much harder. So kind of, and you're not restricting behavior that's going to frustrate them, right? This is a setting that they probably should never even try to get to. This shouldn't be disruptive. And if it is, it's probably for good reason. They were trying to do something they shouldn't be doing.
That's right. Yeah. So you're talking kind of like you don't want manipulation of the profiles,
Exactly.
right? Because yeah, we bring in good people, but you just never know. So
Yep.
just disabling that option to lock out those type of profiles.
Yep. Spot on. All right, this next setting here, and I think we're about halfway. We're making great time. So the next one here is enable render code integrity is set to enabled. Anytime I see code integrity and enabled, probably the right choice here. So tell us why we want to make sure our rendering code is actually correct
Hmm.
and has integrity. Pretty obvious
Yeah,
here, but
well,
go
I love that
ahead.
word, right? You want to you only want trusted, verified code, right? And
Yep.
you want to make sure that it's put into a process that's running, right? So I think that's one. Prevent code injecting, right?
Yep, exactly. I
Right.
mean, to put the real world around it, right? If I was trying to get to an exclusive club or like a voting booth or something, right? I would want a real verified ID or driver's license that proves I am who I say I am, and I'm not saying I'm someone else or injecting a vote for someone else or getting into the bar as someone else, right? This is the type of integrity to make sure there's nothing slipping in there that shouldn't be.
Yeah. Yep. And you also want to have the right engine checks, right, on that code. Make sure it hasn't been tampered with.
Yep.
There's no malicious code. There's a lot of things there too
Yep. And
that
you're leaning into the defense in depth side, right? This is one setting that mitigates the risk of what you're sharing, but there's additional platforms or additional even settings probably that relate to this to add additional checks and additional verifications, right? This is just one aspect that you can do upon many other layers.
got it. Yep.
Yep. All right, awesome. Let's go to this next one here. Enable resolution of navigation errors using a web service is disabled. So sounds like we don't want navigation errors to be allowed, or maybe allow for the user to even know there is something going on. It'll just block them instead. Could you clarify this setting a little bit more? You have any
So we're
insights?
so and just piggyback off me, just make sure I'm thinking through
Yeah.
this right. We're really looking to enhance or really prevent the browser from sending data about
Yeah.
these attempts, right, to the
Yes.
servers. Um, so we're really looking to disable this feature. One of the values and helps protect against preventing these data leaks, right? Oh, look at the
We
cat.
got Bruno. He wanted to chime in on this
Bruno.
setting as well. So he's a huge fan of this one.
Is he? He loves this one.
He
So
gets
I don't know
washed
if you can
often.
piggyback off that, but really looking at how it can help prevent data leaks by disabling this feature.
Yep. And another just kind of use case, right, to really explain navigation errors. So this is something, went wrong, and then the browser might tell you, no, you're supposed to go here. It gives you something to click, right? This could be, in a worst case scenario, this could be a bad actor who wants you to click something. And it's like, hey, you're trying to go here, click here instead. And now in the browser, it looks legit, but in fact, it's taking you to where the bad actor wants and not where it says it's going to take you. So, I mean, trying to think of like a real world example, if I was lost on, some back road or something, and there's someone on the side of the road that says, hey, I have directions, right? I pull over, I say, hey, what are my directions? And he tells me where to go, and then he robs me, right? Instead of trusting him to tell me where to go, I'm double checking my own map. Did I click the right buttons? Like, I'm going to check my own information, my own map, instead of trusting this stranger, this new button that just popped up and saying, yeah, it's going to take me there.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. So it's very much, just like you said, that third party data, that's where it goes, because the third party could be compromised, whatever that is, and now it's injecting something for you to click, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I guess kind of my point was that it's really enhancing that privacy, which
Yep.
then ensures compliance, that you're hitting these protection policies, and then ultimately you're just reducing your exposure, what I
Yep.
keep saying.
But that's what it is about. It's
But it
okay to
is, yeah.
repeat this stuff because these settings are about reducing the blast radius, reducing the risk, and that exposure. You can say that all you want this episode because that's what these settings are really about.
Mm-hmm.
So speaking of exposure, let's go to this next one here. So enable search suggestions is set to disabled. So again, this is that behavior, that exposure, right? I don't need something remembering what I searched in the past to guess what I'm going to search in the future, right? That's just, I can type the sentence, right? So I don't need these suggestions, but Brad, any kind of takeaways on how a bad actor might leverage some of these suggestions, or anything you want to share additional to this setting?
Yeah, we're really just looking at protecting sensitive information, right? Minimizing the data sharing with these services. Really supporting the compliance side of this as well, I think helps. But the user control over what's being searched, those activities, and just, again, helping reduce that as much as possible.
Yep. Absolutely. This one, there's not a lot to say it. This is just like the pre-highlighted text, hit tabbed for it to auto-populate, right? It's
Right.
not necessarily needed. There may be scenarios it does slow down productivity, 2 seconds, because now they have to type the sentence. But realistically, the risk this mitigates is worth more than the 2 seconds for them to type the full sentence. So very much. So let's go to this next one here. So enable, this one's a little bit more security related at least. So enable security warnings for command line flags is set to enabled. So you'll see enabled in the name and in the recommendation. So this one is enforced by default, which is really good. But why would we want warnings on command line flags? This sounds pretty critical.
Yeah, to prevent unauthorized changes
Yep.
to the configs of the browser. I think these security warnings, when they're enabled, they help with the detecting malicious activity
Yep.
when those are flagged.
If you ever had put your MSP hat on, right? If you were working with one of your MSPs and, do you think any of their end clients would ever use a command line process? Obviously, they may have engineers, but a general user leveraging command line to do something in their browser?
Probably not.
Probably not. So this is just saying, hey, we don't expect you. You do not have permissions to do command line. So if command line were to ever happen, you're going to get a bunch of warnings, right? This is, again, to what you were sharing, Brad. It's mitigating the risk and making sure the person who's allowed to do command line is actually doing it, and the people who aren't allowed to do it don't even have access to do it or have warnings leading up to it. Again, defense in depth, there's layers.
This kind of brings into having a good training program.
Oh
that
yeah.
can enhance user awareness on
Yep.
this, because this is, I think, a big piece to this one is awareness, user awareness.
Yeah. I mean, can you talk towards anything at all that you've really learned over the time just with security culture? Like we talk about a lot of these policies and it does drive some behavioral change. Like any best practices or I mean, do you have an opinion? Do having hardened settings like we're talking about today create a stronger security culture? Or what can MSPs do to help their clients have a stronger culture?
Yeah, it's really it's a tricky question, because culture is really hard to change sometimes. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes the company or team is like itching for culture change, and when it comes, it's embraced. Um, and sometimes, a lot of companies, their mentality and culture changes after a cyber breach and after a cyber
Yep.
incident, right? And so I think it all starts when it comes to user awareness. It starts from the top, and you have to build from the top. So C-suite has to buy in,
Yep.
and then it has to escalate down. And I think that's what's most important when it comes to user awareness and really
Yep.
getting that culture
I agree.
in the
Getting
right
that
way.
C-suite to kind of advocate for it and make the investment into the trainings and the awareness, I think that is the biggest way. So very much having that communication line with them is critical. Especially, you can change all these settings at once. A lot of them won't even be noticeable, right? That's the whole avenue that Senteon looks at is which ones will people notice, which ones won't people notice, right? We take all that legwork out of it for you, but at the same time the ones that people will notice, having that vocal champion, that C-suite to buy in and say, hey, here's a warning email. You're now going to have to type in your username every single time, or your machines are now going to lock after 15 minutes, right? Having
Mhm.
the C-suite buy in and vocally advocate for this type of stuff, I think can trickle down to overall company security awareness increased.
Oh yeah, oh
Yep.
yeah, absolutely.
Cool. We got, I think, on 4 more settings. So this next one here, so enable site isolation for every site is set to enabled. So this is saying, I know you mentioned like cross-site scripting
Mhm.
and communication. Like, is this just saying, hey, I'm on this website, just be on this website? Is that all this is saying?
Ensures, yeah. So really ensuring that each website runs basically like its own process,
Yep.
right? And so yeah, from one site, so that one site doesn't affect the other site from like the security side of it. Is that kind of what you're asking?
Yeah, I mean, you had mentioned earlier with the cross-site scripting, I believe, as a MITRE ATT&CK technique, right?
Hmm.
This sounds like when I go to Facebook, right? I'm only on Facebook. I'm not allowing Facebook to communicate with another website or anything like that, right? I'm trying to keep everything I'm doing into an isolated, I guess, container for a better word than just isolating.
Yeah, yeah. So from the way I could best think about it out loud is this isolation really is minimizing the risk of cross-site attacks,
Yep.
right? And that's like cross-site scripting, cross-site registry forgery as well, right? You're familiar with that, I'm sure. And all relying on how they're going to exploit these vulnerabilities um, in a way that browsers handle multiple websites. So ultimately, I think that's one of the benefits in the way that I'm thinking about it from
Yep.
like with my security hat on.
I think that is probably the best way to think about this setting. So spot on there. I think we got 3 more maybe.
Okay.
So this next one here, enable translate is set to disabled. Now this is an interesting one because if I see something in my browser, I'm looking at a website that's in a different language, and probably in a traditional job, I would never need to go to websites that have a different language. But this is saying, don't translate. I think automatically is probably the better phrasing for this GPO, right? Don't
Don't
automatically
automatically.
translate things.
Yeah.
So I know the GPO name maybe doesn't make that very clear. That's not, it's just how Microsoft does their GPOs. But this is saying not to just auto translate, I believe, and making you explicitly give it permission as opposed to just automatically translating for you. But Brad, I mean, wouldn't it be easier if it just translated everything for me? Why is there a security risk there?
Yeah, I mean, it would be nice, right? And as somebody that, there are MSPs kind of all over the world. There are MSPs all over the world. I have had that. I know exactly how this feels in kind of moving through that world. But I mean, really, you want to be able to. You don't want this information to potentially expose data if you automatically are having this translation service pull up. So again, back to privacy, maintaining control over this data, mitigating misinterpretation of the risk. Dude, there's so much more user awareness user awareness on the data privacy. You need to make sure that that's going down. But ultimately, from a security side, you really want a secure browsing experience, right, for your people. So
absolutely. I mean, the things you're translating could be taken advantage of from a bad actor phishing attack, right? They're going to leverage what they learned from that translate data into the next phish, right? So very much, again, just increasing the privacy of your data, not allowing these breadcrumbs to be utilized by malicious third parties to create more targeted, more, wow, the word that came to mind was trickable. That is just not a word. Trickable, man. That is not a word, but that is the word that came to mind. More convincing phishings, I guess, is the better way. But no, spot on. So this next one here makes me laugh because when we did the Chrome hardening series, I could not pronunciate this word, and Heather Noggle was the guest that day. So very memorable for me. But ephemeral. She made that very clear. I knew how to say it. So ephemeral profiles, making sure we cannot use those. I believe this is just saying like, hey, these are temporary profiles, like basically the similar as an anonymous user, and we shouldn't be allowing things that can't be tracked. Is there anything more to this, or?
I mean, what are we just ensuring that no user data is basically retained beyond this session, right?
Yeah. Everything's gone right after, and if they did something malicious, there's no audit trail. There's nothing there, so
there's no data leakage there. Yeah. Okay. So that's a good one.
Yeah, I don't think there's much more to say about it, but obviously we want everyone to be accountable and everyone's to be associated correctly. And this is basically saying, hey, if you use this ephemeral profile, good to go. Nothing's tracked. Do whatever you want.
That's right.
All right, this next one and the last one for the day, we're almost done here. So enable warnings for insecure forms is set to enabled. It's an insecure form. Of course I want to be warned.
Right. Yeah.
Gosh, crazy. Like, I don't know, Brad, I mean, obvious question here, but why do we not want to input data into insecure forms? Why is this warning valuable?
Well, extremely valuable to enable this. It's going to help prevent that data theft. Again, back to your phishing comments, right? This gives the bad guys, it gives the threat actors a lot of juice to really do all kinds of other forms of social engineering. So, hey, man, safer online experience.
Yep, absolutely. And that is all the settings for today. So we can hop into some of the, I mean, we talked about these MITRE attack techniques kind of throughout the presentation, but we did list them here just for, kind of a quick overview. I know we talked about cross-site scripting, which I didn't list here, but there are a lot of these MITRE attack techniques that have the risk mitigated of if you put these settings alone in place. So like, you don't have to do all 3,000 policy changes, right? Just do some of these at a time, do as many as you can, right? Automate what you can as well. But just doing the settings we talked about today is going to mitigate your risk for some of these attacks that are listed here on the screen. So, I mean, going back to our beginning conversation, Brad, and you can talk about more of these attacks, more about MITRE, wherever your heart feels. But, these MITRE attacks are mitigated by configurations, and you guys took the step to include configuration management in your platform, in your company. Like, talk to us one more time. Like, these are important, right?
These are so important, and they actually implementing these controls, these benchmarks, these tools actually drive down that annual residual risk cost that a lot of the insurance companies are looking at when they're underwriting
Yeah.
your organization, your company, and what you have, what you don't have. Um, and not only that, but also peace of mind that you can sleep better at night, knowing that you have a standard, a benchmark that you're adhering to, that you can point to um, when there is an opportunity that you are breached or
Yeah.
you have an incident. Um,
It's better to be aligned to a standard than say, hey, I set these because my gut told me to, right? It's having
they're already
that.
proven. They're already
Yep, they're already
proven.
proven. It's giving you that defensibility to say, "Hey, I did this because." It gives you that authority body to lean on. So very much. You did bring up insurance a little bit. Is there a insurance play if I'm a threat captain user? Is there any relationship between what you do and obtaining insurance or any relationship there?
Not necessarily, no. But
Okay.
we do fit into a lot of those insurance conversations and give the MSP kind of what I was speaking about earlier. When you're running your own company, you got to be dangerous
Yep.
in all different areas, right? So I would like to say that we allow and enable MSPs to be dangerous when they're having cyber insurance conversations when it comes to the financial side of breaches and security control sets
That's
when it
awesome.
relates to like their stack or their bundle.
Yep. That's very cool. I know insurance is just a very hot topic. We are working with Beltex and DataStream Insurance as well over at Senteon. So very much you'll see these mappings popping up more and more of where insurance aligns with CIS. I'm sure they'll be getting to MITRE soon enough if they're not already doing that. But
Oh yeah.
very much a exciting industry to watch evolve. All right, this last slide here, Brad. I mean, we talked a ton about risk, a ton about privacy. Is there any value to hardening your systems and standardizing them other than security and privacy, or is that really the main driver? You have any other takeaways you can share as to why an MSP maybe should, or hopefully not, but should not prioritize this type of thing?
I mean, look, I mean, security compliance are enough uh, alone, in my opinion, as a business owner.
Yeah,
If we want to go out there and work with the clients that we want to work with, we need to show that we have a tight ship here, no pun intended, and that we're adhering to the compliance
love it.
standards. And one of those ways you can do that is configuration management, right? And
Yeah.
browser hardening is a piece of that. And you can, like we just went through, what is it, 10,
Yeah,
11
just like 10 or 11 settings. Like it's not even a
settings.
ton of settings, but there's 120 of these settings on just an Edge browser.
So, I mean, yeah. And it's complicated. It can seem very like a tall mountain to climb. But ultimately, these are all things that are going to better your business, better your client's experience,
Yeah.
um, and do everything that you can to stay ahead of these threat actors, like we've been talking about. And goodness
Yeah.
gracious, hopefully you don't have to stand in front of a judge, But if you do, you feel confident in what you've been doing.
Yep. Well, we got just a few minutes left. Obviously, Threat Captain, early to market. You guys are out there promoting, selling, marketing. Things are going very well. I've been following the story as long as I've known you through Pitch It, but
Mhm.
you guys have had a lot of growth. Anything you can share, whether about Threat Captain we haven't heard yet, or some of those roadmap items to kind of promote?
Well, we're excited to be heading to IT Nation
Woo-woo.
Connect here in a couple
Will there
weeks.
be another Captain's photo booth?
We will have some more captain themed fun things going on at our startup booth. I hopefully will be close to you guys,
I hope so.
and and so we have that coming up. We have some new features that we've been working on and releasing prior to IT Nation. So those are some fun new features within the platform, like updated intake forms that really enhance and deepen the profiles of each client in the platform, as well as some new reporting, as well as the release of our Threat Captain Academy, where
That's
we go
awesome.
through to talk about how you prospect with Threat Captain, how you use Threat Captain in a client renewal. A lot of different learnings that really bring in that financial impact analysis into the MSP's practice and skill set, So a lot of things that we're pumped up about, and 2025 is going to be here before we know it.
Oh, dude, it's gonna be so quick. But no, that was really cool. I don't think that was maybe communicated as well at the beginning, but it sounds like with this Threat Captain Academy being released, it's truly helping build out from hey, initial cold inbound lead, cold outbound lead, and converting a cold person, a first round meeting, all the way to a paying customer. And not only that, but paying customer to renewal customer. You guys are handling, it sounds like, the entire customer life cycle
A
or
lot of
assisting
it.
with.
There's a lot of, well, the neat thing about Threat Captain that we've come to realize is that there's a lot of different valuable use cases the platform can be used for. So even how to use the Threat Captain platform in a tabletop, and how do you bring in the financial impact analysis into that tabletop to or roundtable or discussion with your client.
It's awesome. And we got Steve Brickner shouting out IT Nation. So I'm guessing we
Oh
will both
yeah,
be seeing Steve out there.
that's right.
So very awesome, Brad. Well, thank you for coming on the show, sharing your experience with these settings. And we will both be seeing everyone at IT Nation. But let's go ahead and wrap up here with this final slide. So some upcoming presentations. We do have Chase Cunningham. What is it? Not the virus doctor. Man, I am forgetting his tagline. But Chase Cunningham hopping in, a tool coming in the week after that. And we have our season closer with Matthew Fish to close out edge hardening with everyone, which looks like I actually have those dates mixed up. Anywho, I will fix that later. So very much thank you everyone for being here. If you do want to check out Senteon, head to that link on that right-hand side. You can get free internal or external security assessments with our platform as a thank you for being here during the webinar series. But Brad, incredible grad.